Welcome to Rome Howell, an ongoing conversation around a more authentic and intuitive way of pursuing marketing strategy and small business success, where we dig into the trends and new ways of thinking that are taking hold in the entrepreneurial and digital marketing space and explore what it means to embrace technology and do business in the 21st century. I'm your host, Jennifer Gartner, writer, speaker, lawyer, hardworking, lazy person who loves technology, the adventure of doing all the things and making money along the way. My passion is supporting you in creating powerful, magnetic marketing content that attracts new clients and customers and building the systems you need to automate your business growth. The world is changing. How we develop our small business is changing, and how we connect with our clients and customers is changing. There's a new paradigm of branding and marketing, one where you drop the pretense, show up fully and honestly as you so that you connect deeply with those you are here to serve, so that your work feels like a natural expression of your passion, your purpose, your creativity, and your multi-dimensional self. And your marketing plan reflects that, where we move away from outmoded ways of marketing that feel manipulative and are fear and scarcity based, and towards a more ethical and intuitive way of growing our businesses, one that honors you and your clients, and that's a divine expression of who you are and the work you are here to do in the world. I'm going to share actionable tips and tools and strategies that are working right now that you can use to grow your business with greater ease and greater impact. And the mindset techniques I use to stay creative and visible without burning myself out. Because today's marketing requires us to show up and share ourselves in ways that we've never been called upon to do before. There's an inner muscle or skill set that we need to develop to fully take advantage of all the technologies. So I'll be exploring ways to develop and strengthen that part of yourself so that you can take maximum advantage of everything that's out there to help you grow. I'm also going to have conversations with guests who are online creators and trailblazers and business owners about how they do it, how they are creating businesses they love and extraordinary lives. Join me on my journey as I run multiple businesses and go down all the rabbit holes of the shiny, seductive world of online business land, bust the myths wide open, and show you an evolved and ethical, heartfelt, no BS, and sustainable approach to content creation and marketing online. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Today, I have a really special guest. Her name is Dr. Cindy Childress, the expert's ghostwriter. If you've ever thought about writing a book, you're going to want to listen in, especially if you're a professional, a personal brand, an expert, a coach, or a consultant. Writing a book is a super powerful way for you to grow your authority and your influence. And that's what today's episode is all about. So Dr. Cindy and I met a few years back in a mastermind we were both in, and we've stayed in touch ever since. She is a brilliant writer, and these days she's a ghostwriter and book editor for trailblazers and leaders who want to write books that make money and an impact. And as you'll hear, she leads courses and workshops designed to help you perfect your writing skills and tell powerful stories. When we were talking, Cindy gave me so many great actionable tips that I feel like I'm ready to start writing my book right now. She made it sound so incredibly doable. I now fully believe it is. I always doubted it before, but not anymore. And I hope that after listening to this episode, that you're also going to feel as inspired. If you ever thought you might have a book in you, then you definitely want to take the time to listen to this one. We talked about how to come up with the idea for the book, how to organize our book topics, how to use existing material, including what we share in our blogs and even on social media. Cindy shared self-publishing tips, how to monetize the book, and the biggest challenge of all, if you ask me, which is time management. How do you make the time or find the time to get it all done? I'm going to link to Cindy's website and her Instagram in the show notes so that you can get even more information about how she can help you write your book
But in the meantime, have a listen to our conversation, and I really hope you enjoy. Hi, Cindy. Welcome to Rome Hell Podcast 2.0.
Hey, Jennifer, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on because you are someone that I've known since, well, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years now, since I was brand new to the online marketing and content creation space. And I followed you really closely. And I'm super impressed with everything that you're creating and everything that you're doing. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because I want to bring your work to my audience, because I think that they're really going to benefit a lot from what you have to say and from your expertise.
Well, thank you so much. And I certainly hope so.
Oh, I'm sure so. Let's begin by just explaining who you are and what you do.
Yes, I am Dr. Cindy, the expert's ghostwriter, and I help trailblazers and leaders write books that make money and an impact. My clients have gone on to do things such as publish best-selling books, win book awards, and wind up on the TEDx stage delivering a signature talk that comes directly from the book. And I work with people one on one with private ghostwriting and book editing services. And I also have a few writing courses, Crank Out Your Book in 8 weeks, and Success Story, a 6 week story writing course.
My goodness, you have been so busy since we met. I love it. I absolutely love it. Okay, so let's unpack this slowly. One of the things I wanted to share with the people who are listening is the idea of the book being the new business card. And I wanted to ask you what you think about that idea.
I think a book can be a business card. And it can also be a side hustle as well that maybe doesn't relate to your business. So, when it comes to a book being a business card for you, how does that work well? Well, it works well when the content of your book directly relates to exactly how you are working with clients. So, if you have a signature framework, that would be a great way to frame the book itself and teach your framework in the book. Another way would be to use the very same content pillars you may use for your social media content and blogging, and maybe even repurpose some of that content into the book and make sure that you include a lot of stories, not just about yourself and how you learned these tools and strategies, but also how you help other people do it, either with stories about your own clients and students, or if your business is new, maybe just informally how you've helped people, or maybe even, if you are starting a new business, but you have helped people with these same problems in your professional life previously, go ahead and mention that as well. And when you do this, you help people imagine how you could also help them too. So, another thing that you want to do for your book to be a successful business card is always to have a way for people to follow up with you. So, when you think about a business card, how does it work? Well, there's your email address and maybe your website. So we want to do the same things in your book. And I suggest there to have a freebie, something that comes with your book. So people feel like they kind of bought that too, like it's part of the package, such as a digital workbook that goes with the book. So, and you refer to it throughout the book so people know to go get their free workbook. And there's the link again if I haven't done it already. And of course, that will take them to a landing page where they give you their email address in exchange for the workbook. So you can stay in touch with them, let them know about your future offers and ways to work with you and learn from you. And they get more of their favorite author that they admire and respect so much. So it's a win-win-win.
Well, you have me ready to write my book already. Now I've got 3 books in my head that I could be writing. I'm sure
Yay!
I'll be. I love this idea. I mean, this really is sort of a new way for a person or a business owner to be able to market themselves and to put themselves out there in a way that's beyond the superficial. But I also think, and tell me if you agree, but I feel like when we write a book, it lends an air of legitimacy and authority to what it is we're thinking and saying in the book.
Absolutely. I have been working on a publishing proposal for a yoga instructor who has way more YouTube and Instagram followers and podcast subscribers than tons of other yoga instructors with published books. But because they have published books, they're getting, even when they're self-published, they're landing on, top 10 yoga book digests because the books are actually good. And so, yeah, there's a credibility that you don't have any other way as well as when you are a published author. And these days, I will also say it's getting harder and harder to even tell the difference between traditionally published and self-published authors. So it's becoming more democratic, which I think is exciting and should just be a green light for more people to take the plunge and become an author.
Absolutely. I think that also having a book just adds another like geographic territory to your marketing ecosystem.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about where people go for information, if I'm looking for a quick digestible chunk, I'll go to Google and I'm hoping to find an article or maybe a blog, right? And if I'm looking for someone to follow, I may go to Instagram or YouTube to binge some content. But when I'm looking for an authority, when I'm looking for someone who really knows what they're talking about, I'm probably going to find myself on Amazon or barnesandnoble.com, or even walking into my local Barnes and Noble since the world's opening up again. And that's where I'm going to go to find the person who I'm really going to trust the most. They won't just have things that I take under suggestion. They're going to be things that I say, okay, this person has the final word here because they're a published author.
Yeah, it really helps elevate your ideas, your approach, your methodology, if you have one, your framework, if you have one. I think it really lends credibility to your ideas and what you do.
Absolutely. And it's not just about people finding you through those book avenues, because obviously that's another place where you might find new people to engage with you. But even the people on your other platforms, the people that are already subscribed to the other places where you have regular content, once you add a book there, you have just elevated yourself and made it even more likely they're going to spend more money with you and more time engaging with you.
Yeah, these are such important ideas to think about. I think if for anybody who's even thinking that they might have a book in them. What's curious is that I write all the time, and I write content for my clients. I write content for my blog, for Instagram, sometimes for Facebook. And I don't know, I'm writing every day, like most of the day, as part of what I do for work. But I never think in terms of, oh, I should write a book. It's kind of and when I do think about it, the prospect of doing that feels daunting. Like, how am I ever going to come up with enough to say for a book? Like, I can do bite-sized, consumable little chunks of content, but how do you take those ideas and weave them into a book?
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned you're already writing a lot, because for people who are already blogging or even writing social media captions, you've probably got a lot of ideas already there in some form that you're going to be able to repurpose into your book instead of starting from scratch with a blank page. So one thing I would do is look through what you've written and look for some common threads. And I would start, if you haven't already on the back end, then I would do it now and start taking the pieces of content that you like, because some of them, will just sound like that same thing that you talk about a lot. And here you talked about it again, but it wasn't particularly fresh or exciting. I do that even myself. So I'm not calling anybody out on their content that I'm not guilty of as well. But anyway, then there will be other ones where you're like, wow, this was amazing. This is where I said it the best. And, start taking those posts and, those pieces of writing and then look for the common thread. What, is there a theme or a topic that you're addressing more that you might be able to either make into like one part of your book, or maybe it's big enough to be the entire book? And I have a lady who was in Crank Out Your Book in 8 weeks the last time that I taught it in the first quarter of this year. And for her, she had just hundreds of LinkedIn articles that she's written over the last few years of her private executive consulting business. And so she took all those articles and put them in content buckets of what stage of, needing an executive coach would someone be in when this article or that article would be more appropriate to them. So she went through there and was able to do the first section of her book. The part one is all the things people would need to know before they left the job they have. And then, part two just takes it from, what to ask for and how to leave. And, it just goes from there. And then as she put the articles with, the collated those topics according to where they go, then she was able to say, okay, so where are my gaps in this table of contents? What else am I not addressing? And so from that, then she wrote some additional articles. So she was still publishing her LinkedIn content at regular intervals. And she was strategically repurposing it into her book, plugging those holes on things she hadn't even realized she hadn't addressed until she kind of took this bird's eye view. And she's got almost 50,000 words in her manuscript, and she should be published before the end of the year, unless she finds a reason to want to hold off.
Wow. That is so inspiring to me, especially because yesterday I was going through some things that I had saved to my desktop because I have to like regularly do desktop hygiene, or else it gets totally cluttered with all kinds of things. And one of the documents that I stumbled upon was my LinkedIn post inventory. And some of it was 3-4 years old, which in internet years is probably like dog years. But anyway, so I was reading through the content and I thought to myself, wow, the ideas and the values, the brand values that I have been talking about for the last over 4 years now are the same. I wrote about this in a different way 4 years ago, and you just inspired me to take them and like organize them now by content buckets. I love buckets. I have buckets all the time. I know my buckets by heart because, I'm creating content all the time, but this is like a great idea, compiling that.
Yes, I want you to do it. And I know you can't see me right now, but I've color coded my bookcase. So I'm a strong believer in putting like things together. I do it almost compulsively, but it works really well for book editing and organizing.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm definitely going to do that. And then another idea that I have is I often am asked to present and speak at different types of events. Like last week, I was asked to present a talk to trial lawyers about how to be magnetic and persuasive and some, psychological and mindset survival skills for trial and the trial preparation and the actual trial process. And I was thinking as I was doing that, this is so similar to what I teach people who want to learn how to be more influential and persuasive in their marketing. And I thought, wow, I have these talks. I could have those recorded talks transcribed, and maybe that could be the basis of a book. Do any of your clients ever do that?
You definitely could. And I have a client, I did a book edit for her, and she had a series of talks that she had her extemporaneous notes, and then she had the recording transcribed itself. And then we used that to create her book chapters. So I'll give you two things. I'll say, for those book chapters, because there was already an organization and a logic to way the talks were presented, that lends itself really well to working from a transcript. And of course, the ums and uhs, all that, she's a professional speaker. So that wasn't really an issue. And I just said, like, just because I brought it up, it's like a yawn. I did it again. So it can work. What she ran into, and I'll say, just keep this in mind, was each talk created a beautiful chapter. But then she was a little bit unhappy with how the chapters themselves didn't really flow together for a unified focus for the entire book. So it worked very well if she wanted to publish it as a series of essays. But if she wanted it to publish as something that really the whole book had a conversation with itself, it didn't really do that, because a lot of those talks were approaching the same topic from different ways. And so when you look at that in context of a book, we want to feel like we're getting somewhere. And so every talk was about find your inner gold, find your inner gold. But for a book, we don't want to read a whole book that's motivating us to find our inner gold. At a certain point, maybe at least 30% through, I want to start feeling like I'm making progress on finding my inner gold.
Right.
And so that can become an issue you can run into with a series of talks.
Interesting. Well, I'm going to keep that in mind when I go back and I revisit that, and I'll probably be calling you to help me with that because, maybe, okay, I'm jumping around here in my head, but sometimes I will search for a book and then either in, Apple iBook, I don't even know what they call it, but that's what I use on my phone because I have an iPhone. They will suggest other books, or even on Amazon, I'll search for one title and then they suggest others, like readers who read this also purchased this. And sometimes you see these books that are really inexpensive, like $1.99, $3.99, $5.99 for a related or a somewhat tangential topic. And I don't know, maybe a little talk or an essay could be the subject of its own mini ebook, which could also have benefits for the publisher.
Sure, you can absolutely publish a book that's only available on Kindle, which would be to say an ebook. Although I will say there's not many disadvantages, and it's not very difficult at all to also have a hardback edition, which lends a little more credibility, or even more credibility with a hardback, which is also not difficult to do. But, if it's like seriously a 36-page ebook, then it might be more appropriate to just keep it to the digital form. But you can run Amazon ads. And the way that works is, for a sponsored ad, you can choose books in your category where you want your book to show up in that it'll be in the sponsored, what would you call it? The sponsored bar that you can scroll through on your screen. And obviously there, depending on what you're bidding for that sponsored position, you might be in the first set of results, or they might have to push the little arrow to see yours. And I think there can be up to 20 that you can scroll through depending on how many people have bid for those sponsored show ups. But absolutely, I see self-published books in those sponsored ads all the time. And when you work with a professional book designer, it's really hard to tell the difference between those and the ones that are the sponsored ads paid for by traditional publishers. So absolutely, I think that's another place where things are getting really democratic, and not just on Amazon, but even on barnesandnoble.com. Unless you know who the publishers are and you know where and what to look for, it's really hard to distinguish who's who, which I think is cool.
I think it's really cool. And I love the whole idea of the democratization of these platforms and these mediums so that more people can get the word out to a wider audience. I'm all about that, as you know.
Yes.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Are there any tips that you would give to someone who thinks, oh, I think maybe I want to write a book that will help them in being successful?
Yes. First of all, something we've already talked about, if you've already been writing on your topic, even if it's just broadly speaking, you've been doing it somewhere on social media or privately or giving talks and workshops, collate everywhere that you've been talking about your subject and see if you can find a topical thread that might be enough that you could then start filling in the gaps and create a first draft of a manuscript. Another thing I'll suggest that we've also mentioned a little bit is shopping online. So it's a good idea to start thinking about what kind of book you might want to write by looking at what bookshelf maybe it goes on. So there you can go to Amazon and start typing in words that you think people might type to find a book like yours and see what results come up and start noticing which of those books. You can just look at the book description and look at the author bio as well and think, do I have things in common with this author? And again, the book proposal that I'm working on, I'm doing that exact same thing for this influencer to look at the bios and say, okay, this person also has a YouTube channel and a successful podcast, and this is who published that book. Maybe they'll want to publish this book too. So you can do that if you're looking for maybe places to pitch traditional publishers. And then for self-publishing, just look at all the exact same things and say, what space do I belong in? Look how long the book is. Look at, does it have pictures or does it not? And just start thinking, what kind of book would I need to create to be competitive in this space, and do it.
And do it. Doing it is like the I don't know, that's where the rubber hits the road, right?
Yes, it does.
Because we can have all these ideas and these dreams and these goals, but it's often very difficult to carve the time out to set it aside so that you can focus on the project. So do you have any advice to give to people who might be feeling challenged in that area?
Yes. Just start somewhere. I like to start with a plan. So just think about what one person, one target reader who might be interested in what you have to say. And I would look at your immediate audience and say, who is interested? It could be your friend. I have a client who, the main impetus for her book, the target reader she has in mind is a friend of hers who's really encouraged her to write the book. And I said, okay, well, you're going to be looking for more people just like your friend. So let's create a reading avatar around her personality profile. And then let's write the book to them. Just, who's one person that would be interested? And don't be distracted by who all would be interested yet. Let's just get your thoughts on paper. And then, from what you've written, you may get ideas that you don't have today before you have seen what you actually have to say and, how many words it is and how distinct and unique it is. Because often when you write, you realize something that you hadn't known already about your subject matter or even yourself.
And I think it's really useful to think in terms of writing to one person, because then that sort of concretizes in my own head when I do it, what that person needs to hear, what they might be interested in, how I can help them with what it is I know. It just really helps focus me when I'm conceptualizing what I want to say and how I want to say it.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. So now I have that was the art part. Here's the commerce part. Mm-hmm. How do people make money off of these books? I think I have some ideas, but I want to hear what you, the experts, ghostwriter, have to say.
Absolutely. So you can and should be making money from one-to-one book sales, which is why once you hit bestseller, if that's of interest to you, when you might have your book free or 99 cents for a short period of time, after that, you want to raise your price because your book is valuable and should be paid for because the information is amazing and, people are more likely to pay more attention to something they paid for. So you will make money on book sales. And I have a client who I ghostwrote her book in 2017, and she tells me she still gets royalty checks from Amazon every month. And she has no idea, she's not driving traffic to the book anymore. And yet it is still selling. So that will work. However, most nonfiction authors, and this is a statistic covering all self-published nonfiction authors, they tend to sell around 500 books. So if you're profiting $4 or $5 a book, that's not going to be like leave your day job kind of money. So
No.
what do we do?
Right? It's one trip to the grocery store in this house.
Exactly. So how else are we going to make money? So we do want to sell more books than just 500. And, we've talked about some ways to do that with Amazon ads and even driving people from your other platforms to go purchase your book. And another really important way to do that is using those lead magnets, which I know, Jennifer, you're an expert on, having something free that is a lead magnet that people get with the book. So they get on your email list. And then you should already have at least one offer ready to go when you publish your book that you are making to people who are joining the list from the book. So I've got the book, and now what else do I want? Oh, wow, you've already built it and it's here. And it can be a guided book study. It can be a course that goes with the book. It can be an invitation to a retreat or a workshop where you teach some things from the book, working with you one-on-one or in a group. Lots of different ways that you can offer something, even PDFs of different information. You liked that. Well, here's more. Maybe audio files of meditations, depending on what your focus is and what would make sense. But having something to sell to those readers, that's how you really can make really, really great money through being a self-published nonfiction author. So you take those people who are your readers and then you continue upselling them kind of in much the same way that a tripwire funnel works for a lot of different kinds of industries. And this is how we do it for books.
Okay, my wheels are so busy spinning. They're spinning at like 80 miles an hour right now in my head as I'm listening to you. That is such an interesting way of monetizing your services. And that's like a great digital marketing concept and way of doing that. And so for my listeners who are tuning in because they want to understand the digital marketing landscape, I want you to see how all these pieces work together, how all the content sort of like relates back and feeds into all these other avenues that ultimately lead the audience to you, the service provider, the professional, the business owner.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah, so do I. And that's why I want to write a book. I'm just a little busy right now, but I think maybe next year, let's put it down for 2022 because we're already in May and I have some existing goals. And my big problem is the rabbit holes and the squirrels. Like I want to go down the rabbit holes. I want to chase the squirrels and I don't always stay focused on like the thing I set out to do because while I am like on the path to doing the thing I want to do, I'm always discovering new things that make me want to do them too. So that's like just a little bit about me, little information there. I don't think I'm alone in that.
No, not at all. And that's one reason that I created the course, Crank Out Your Book in 8 weeks, because I'm basically saying there, give me 8 weeks when it's you and your book. And we even talk a lot about time management and about what anything that you do that's extraneous from the book. Can you take some time off that activity to devote more time to writing this first draft? Because once your first draft is written, I mean, there's lots of editing to do and different kinds of work, but a lot of that can't begin in a really concerted way without having a whole manuscript done. Sometimes chapter 3 doesn't work and you don't know why. Well, the reason is you haven't written chapter 8 yet. And once you do, you're going to realize that, some things should be different and it just won't be clear till you have a whole draft. So that's one thing I would suggest. And those other things you're putting on hold to do your book, no, they're only on hold temporarily and you will get back to them. But I think if we don't say yes to a particular project in a particular season, it's really hard to make traction.
Absolutely. And I love the idea of setting aside the time and really creating the space for whatever it is that you feel needs to come through you to actually come through.
Yes.
I think being intentional about that and really tuning in to what it is you really want to say, it's a lot easier when you have the space. But having said that, the space can be carving out for example, like an hour every day.
Yes, that's actually one thing I say in Crank Out Your Book in 8 weeks is if you can give your book just an hour a week, you can have at least a 30,000 word draft in just a few weeks. So, absolutely, it doesn't have to be more than that. And another thing some of my students have done, if there's some days when a whole hour is just not going to happen, I suggest that you always make a date with your book, even if it's a brief date. At least open the file and do something every day, even if it's just 15 minutes, and then make sure you're making up that time somewhere else in the week. A lot of my clients are, they're entrepreneurs with a business or they have a full-time job. And so they're writing kind of in the pockets of time, either in the early morning or the evening or the weekends. But plenty of people have written very successful books in those pockets of time. So you don't have to like have your whole calendar clear and go to a cabin in order to write your book.
Oh, I want to clear my calendar and go to a cabin to write my book.
Well, if you can, totally do that.
That would be the dream, the fantasy, the luxury, the goal, if you will. Like that is how I would love to write a book. I have done that. Like I will take myself on a retreat for the specific purpose of having the space and the time to create the thing. Like I usually start with an intention and then I go to the place. And my favorite place is Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a place that draws in a lot of creatives. I love that.
Okay. So I don't know exactly. I'm going to find out more about this, but apparently there's some very powerful like vortexes in the earth. I'm not going to get into it because I don't know enough about it to speak intelligently, but there's a lot of reasons that creative people find that being in that geographic area really fuels the creative process. And it's definitely true for me.
Yes. Well, that's amazing. Anything that inspires you. I had not heard that, but another thing that you can do is even pay attention to the moon, because there are times that we can be in more of a creative flow just with the magnetism of the earth. I would like to say, don't look at that religiously and then ignore your book when, according to the moon, it's a bad time. Like that, because there's a lot to be said for just consistently showing up for the work, but also just really leaning in when you know it's going to be a better time. I think at least psychologically, that's going to do something that's going to be more generative for you.
Oh, there's so many things that we can do, including creating rituals. But I love the idea of using the cycles of the moon. I mean, one of the things that I just absolutely love experimenting with is different ways to get into the flow state. And I'm all about whatever it takes. If it's you got to go isolate yourself in a desert, fine, do it. If you need to pay attention to the cycles of the moon, do it. Whatever it takes. If you need to meditate, if you need to breathe and stimulate like your parasympathetic nervous system, do it. Whatever it takes, just do it.
Yes, absolutely. Don't be afraid to get a little woo if that's going to help you get your words out onto paper.
Absolutely. Woo is so much fun. And the thing, like we were saying before we started the interview, and when we were just catching up with each other, is that lately my writing has been speaking. I speak my ideas, and that makes it go so much faster because I can speak a rough draft and then go back and spend 5 minutes editing and then push publish, and I'm done.
Beautiful. So, where's your book? I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I keep saying the same things over and over and over again. So here's my limiting belief. How would you help me bust this? I feel like I'm saying the same things over and over and over again because like I know my quote unquote content buckets. I know the values that are important to me. I know my mission like the back of my hand, right? And so I am constantly writing and sharing on the same basic topics. So I worry that it's not going to be enough for an entire book.
Ooh, that is so great. So you will benefit from taking those content buckets and collating the like information together. So on a certain value, let's just start there to have some common language. So let's say you've got one content bucket for a particular value. Then I would look within that bucket, and what you're going to want to do is use the exact same narrative arc that you would if you were writing a novel or a creative writing story, and arrange the information on a narrative arc. So you want to start with an initial conflict, which for you would be, this is a pain point that is itching your reader right now. They want to solve this, and have that be what opens the chapter. And then organize the rest of the information such that you are continuing to create tension. And another thing you can do is make sure to use stories and really colorful, emotionally evocative examples, because that's going to help not just talk at the reader and, inform, which does become boring and starts to feel like, why do I care about this? But when you're continuing to paint those pictures of why this is important, you're continuing to keep them engaged emotionally, and then make sure you're going toward a climax. So this section of the book, this particular pillar, is going to have a bam moment where everything else that you're leading up to was going somewhere, and here's where it went. There's the payoff. And that's where that part ends. And then you start the next part. And when you do it that way, I think you're going to realize you will want to eliminate some repetition that would be present, just because each time you write a blog or even when you give another talk, you can't assume the audience knew everything else you already said on the topic. So you have to frame it again. So you will delete some things, but you'll also create a really tight and coherent argument for each particular section.
Wow, Cindy, this is so good. And I have a feeling that if I were to sign up for your course or work with you one-on-one, we would be able to go even deeper. And the idea of that is so exciting to me.
It is for me too. I would love to see you in my courses.
I would love to have the time and space to be in your courses. Like I said, one of these days, I'm definitely going to do it, but it is a time space thing. as you know.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So when the timing's right, I believe in the divine timing. And when it is right, I will definitely be there, or I'll just be calling you and saying, here, help me. Here it is.
Either way, I'm a big fan of divine timing too. There will be a reason you haven't done it yet. And it's because you haven't learned something or haven't experienced something. It hasn't quite come together in the way that it's going to when it is going to be time. And that's going to be really amazing.
Yes. Well, if people want to have more information about how they can reach you and work with you, where can they find you?
So the best place to go is my website, www.cindychildress.com. You'll find all the information about my upcoming courses and how to work with me one-on-one there. And then I also have a really fun quiz, Discover Your #1 Best-Selling Author Personality. And you can find that at cindychildress.com/quiz. I'm also on Instagram, hanging out every day at Cindy Childress, PH.D.
Fabulous. I love following you there. I love the pictures of your kitties. I love when the cats walk across your desk when you're doing a IGTV or a live stream. I love your content. So everybody who's listening, definitely go follow Cindy there. You're going to learn just from watching her content. And I know that, it's going to be it's a good thing. Go follow Cindy. Let's put it that way.
Thank you so much. And definitely you need to like cats to enjoy my content. There's lots of cats.
Yeah, but the kittens, like the kitten story with the rescue and how you fostered those babies. Oh my gosh.
They are so cute now. They're 5 weeks. And this morning I went down and they were 5 of them were on top of my bathrobe. And I'm like, I guess I just can never get up. So adorable.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm so jealous. I would love to have a party with a bunch of kitties. That just sounds like so much fun.
It totally is.
Well, thank you so much for joining me here on the podcast today. And for everybody who's listening, I will link to the show notes and all of these good links that Cindy just dropped. And you can track her down and follow her and write a book.
Yes, thank you. This was great, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you liked what you just heard, I'd really appreciate it if you would go on to Apple Podcasts and leave a review and rate the podcast. When you do this, it helps make sure that other people who might benefit from this message will find the podcast and hear it. Also, feel free to tell a friend, share it with someone who may also need to hear this message. And you can also follow me on Instagram at I am Jennifer B. Gardner. Feel free to connect with me there. You can always send me a DM if you have a question or you'd like to chat. And if you're looking for information on how to automate how you can get leads for your business and you're feeling sort of overwhelmed by the whole online marketing thing, go to romehowell.com/mystrategy and download a free resource I created that will show you my strategy for growing your business using a very simple approach involving email, video, social media, and a simple automated sales funnel. I'll drop the link in the show notes, but you can go to www.romehowell.com/mystrategy. I will see you next week. Take care.